أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا، وأنت إذا شئت جعلت الحزن سهلا. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أما بعد. We will continue, inshallah, today our tafsir, Surat Al-Aala. The last ayah we stopped at, which is ayah number 6 and 7. سنقرئك فلا تنسى إلا ما شاء الله إنه يعلم الجهر وما يخفى. We said that this was a promise to the Prophet ﷺ, glad tidings given to the Prophet ﷺ from the beginning of the surah. سبح اسم ربك الأعلى, sanctify the name of your Lord, because there is something good that is coming. Your Lord is worthy of your glorification because of a promise. There's a promise in the surah, there's a glad tidings, bushra, that is coming in the surah, which is this bushra here. سنقرئك فلا تنسى. Yani we will continue to teach you the Quran and we will never forget. Whatever we teach you, you will never forget. You will always remember. سنقرئك فلا تنسى. The Prophet ﷺ, as a reminder, he used to, in the beginning of the revelation, he used to repeat after Jibreel alayhi salam, like a learner repeats after the teacher in order to memorize, right? Because he was worried, the Prophet ﷺ was worried that he will forget. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comforted him in this surah and also in Surat Al-Qiyamah. إن علينا جمعه وقرآنه. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comforted the Prophet ﷺ in this surah and in Surah Al-Qiyamah. Here he says to him, سنقرئك فلا تنسى. Yani we will make you recite the Quran and learn the Quran. It will be inscribed in your heart and you will never forget it. So this is a qat'i, this is like a decisive evidence from the Quran that the Prophet ﷺ, when he is taught the Quran, he will never forget it. And as we said, it is very important to note that the ayah ends right here. سنقرئك فلا تنسى, end of the ayah. End of the ayah in the Quran, it means the meaning is complete. You do not need the next ayah to understand the current ayah. When the ayah ends like that, it means the meaning is complete. So the meaning in the ayah is that we will teach you the Quran and you will never forget it. Whatever we teach you, you will never forget it. And of course, this is a requirement of the da'wah. The Prophet ﷺ is the one who was entrusted with the message. He was entrusted with the Quran. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him a promise that this trust is going to be preserved by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. إِنَّا نَحْنُ نَزَّلْنَا الذِّكْرَ وَإِنَّا لَهُ لَحَافِظُونَ. Not a single letter of the Quran will be lost. It will be conveyed the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted it to be conveyed. سنقرئك فلا تنسى إلا ما شاء الله. إلا ما شاء الله. Now this is the beginning of a new ayah. The meaning there is complete. سنقرئك فلا تنسى is complete. إلا ما شاء الله. Some of the ulama said that there are exceptions. So this means that there are exceptions, that there are in certain circumstances that the Prophet ﷺ is going to forget certain ayat. Right? سنقرئك فلا تنسى إلا ما شاء الله. It means except with the will of Allah. With the will of Allah, you might forget certain ayat. But what does this exactly mean? We interpreted that two ways. Different. The last. I personally think that since the ayah, and there are some of the mufassirin who also actually support that, since the previous ayah ended, the meaning is complete. إِلَّا مَا شَاءَ اللَّهِ. It does not go back to the Quran, according to some of the mufassirin. It goes back to other things that have to do with the human being life, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes forgetfulness a ni'mah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Think about when you forget things, that's a ni'mah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If the human being continues to remember everything, he will live a miserable life. So nisyan, forgetfulness, is a ni'mah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How come? Because the human being in his life, he has good moments, right? He has happy occasions and he has sad and miserable occasions, right? If imagine that someone had like a very severe accident, like he lost his family or members of his family, like in a car accident, and he saw that with his own eyes. He was there, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saved him. Imagine that this incident is always on his mind, every minute. What would be his life like? Miserable, right? So the nisyan, forgetfulness, is a ni'mah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So don't think of it as always negative. Nisyan, forgetfulness, is a ni'mah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when he says, إِلَّا مَا شَاءَ اللَّهِ, يعني, except what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills for you to forget, not from the Quran, as a human being. All the hardships and all the miserable moments that you passed through when the kuffar of Quraysh used to torture the Prophet ﷺ and his companions, all the difficult times when they planned to kill him, when they sieged him, in the valley of Abu Talib, for 3 years, Banu Hashim, both Muslims and non-Muslims were sieged by the kuffar of Quraysh for 3 years, right? All these painful moments, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us the ni'mah of nisyan. That's a ni'mah. So, سَنُقْرِئُكَ فَلَا تَنْسَى, the meaning is complete. Yani, whatever we teach you from the Quran, because you are interested in to carry the Quran and to convey the Quran. So whatever we teach you from the Quran, you will never forget. The meaning is complete. إِلَّا مَا شَاءَ اللَّهِ does not go back to that ayah. إِلَّا مَا شَاءَ اللَّهِ, yani, you will forget things that Allah wills you to forget outside the realm of the wahi as a human being. Okay? So this is a tafsir that I personally is more inclined toward than the typical tafsir. The typical tafsir is what we said last time, is that the Prophet ﷺ was made to forget certain ayat, and this goes with the subject of abrogation in the Quran. Some of the mufassirin, they say that abrogation occurs in the Quran, and abrogation that occurs in the Quran can be the abrogation of the ayat themselves, meaning that certain ayat will be lifted out of the Mus'haf completely. And these ayat that were lifted out of the Mus'haf, the Prophet ﷺ was made to forget them. Okay, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intended to abrogate them. So the Prophet ﷺ was made to forget them, right? Personally, I go with the opinion that says that nothing in the Mus'haf was abrogated in tilawah. What gets abrogated in the Mus'haf is the ruling, not the tilawah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has never taken an ayah out of the Mus'haf after He revealed it to the Prophet ﷺ. What gets abrogated is the hukum or the ruling, but the ayah remains in the Mus'haf. For example, before the revelation of the ayat that have to do with inheritance, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala detailed the rules of inheritance in the Quran. Before these ayat were revealed, al-wasiyya, a will, writing a will was obligatory. كتب عليكم إذا حضر أحدكم الموت إن ترك خيرا الوصية للوالدين والأقربين بالمعروف حقا على المتقين. So writing a will before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala detailed the rules of inheritance, it was left to the person to write in his will, right, who is going to, how he is going to distribute his wealth after his death. But then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, later on in Surat An-Nisa, He revealed many ayat detailing how the will is going to be distributed, the inheritance. So the ulama said, what used to be obligatory, now it is recommended, and it is separate from the issue of inheritance. So in the will, you cannot dictate in your will except things that are outside the inheritance rules, right? So for example, if you have, you can dictate up to 1/3 of your will, right, outside inheritance. Not more than 1/3. So if someone dies, for example, or and he's writing his will before his death, he can say that I give 1/3, up to 1/3 of my wealth as donation to this party, to this organization, or to this orphanage, or to this, up to 1/3. I give like 1/6 or 1/7 of my will to this person because he used to be good to me, like a relative. Or maybe like an adopted son. And we talked about adoption. We said in Islam, adoption is prohibited in the sense of adopting someone and attributing him to your lineage. But you can adopt in the sense of raising a kid, child, daughter or son, but you do not attribute him or her to your lineage. You keep calling her after her or his biological parents, right? And because he is not your natural son, biological son, the rules of inheritance does not apply to him or her. But you can write in your will that I give a share of my money, to this person. The rule of making the will obligatory was abrogated. But the ayah that talks about, the will is still in the Quran, and we recite it. So the abrogation does not mean that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes an ayah completely out of the Quran in order to abrogate it. It means the divine rule that was contained in the ayah is abrogated by another divine rule that comes in another ayah. And by the way, the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ does not abrogate the Quran. Only the Quran abrogates the Quran. The Quran abrogates the Quran in the sense that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala might reveal a certain ayah that will abrogate a ruling that was in a different ayah. And this is a whole discipline by itself, and it's very intricate and very precise discipline, because in order to say that this ayah abrogated that ayah, you have to know the order of revelation. That is important. In order for ayah B to abrogate ayah A, right? Ayah B must have been revealed after ayah. So the order of revelation must be known, right? And abrogation in the Quran is not many ayat were abrogated. Like some people make it seem that there was many ayat where there were many ayat abrogated in the Quran. This is not true. Not many ayat were abrogated in the Quran. And the abrogation, of course, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows the human society, what we can afford as human beings. So He might reveal, for example, in the beginning, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba, Ya ayyuhal muzammil qum al-layla illa qalila. So the Prophet ﷺ and his ashab, his early ashab, used to perform qiyam al-layl all the night until their feet used to be swollen. That was in the beginning. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed ayat to abrogate that, right? Toward the end of the surah, فَقْرَأُوا مَا تَيَسَّرَ مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ. Make qiyam for a while and rest for a while, right? Why was that ruling tough in the beginning? Because this was the nucleus. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was grooming this elected few from the Sahaba of the Prophet ﷺ, because He was preparing them for a mission that is very difficult. And how did He prepare them? By bringing him closer to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. And how do they get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Through the qiyam, the salah, the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it was a stage of time, right? And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala relaxed things for them. So abrogation does not mean, like, it used to be interpreted like some people say abrogation means that, وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ, we sanctify Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from such an understanding where people say, it's like what happens to us human beings when we make a decision and then we discover we were mistaken and we change our mind. Subhanallah. Some people actually, they have the tenacity of attributing this to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sometimes make a decision and then he discovers that wasn't the right decision, so it's not like that. Allah knows everything. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one with the unlimited wisdom, and he knows everything. So it means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for a certain stage of time, he legislates a certain ruling for a certain purpose, and then he lifts that ruling, or he makes it easier later on. Well, it's lifting in a sense that, yeah, sometimes it's lifted completely. For example, al-wasiyya used to be obligatory. Now it's not obligatory. Right? It used to be obligatory before the revelation of the... But the ayah in which al-wasiyya was made obligatory is still in the Quran. It was not taken out of the Quran. What was lifted is not the ayah. What was lifted is the ruling in the ayah by other rulings. That is very important to understand. This is the subject to abrogation. No ayah was taken out of the Mus'haf. No ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never revealed an ayah and then was taken out. All the ahadith to that effect cannot be taken as an evidence, because in order for us to establish that this is part of the Mus'haf, this is an ayah in the Mus'haf, there has to be a recurrent evidence that this is part of the Mus'haf. The Quran itself was conveyed to us by the process of tawatur. Tawatur means it's recurrent. It's a whole generation conveying the Mus'haf to the next generation, If we have an individual narration, a person from another person, telling us that there used to be an ayah of such and such in the Mus'haf and was taken out, this we cannot accept, right? Because the Quran itself, one of the conditions of the Quran, for a surah to be considered part of the Quran, or an ayah to be, it has to be narrated to us, related to us by the process of tawatur. It cannot be narrated to us by the process of an individual narration.
Was he made to forget certain ayahs? Because some people say that Rasulullah forgot certain ayahs, Allah made him.
Yes, so this is the second interpretation, which is the interpretation that the Prophet ﷺ, Allah will make him momentarily forget a certain ayah in order for him to teach us what to do if we forget an ayah during the salah, for example. Like if the imam, for example, forgets an ayah or skips an ayah while he's reciting in a salah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted the Prophet ﷺ to teach us via an example. What should we do as people who are praying behind that imam? So if there's a hafidh behind that imam, and the imam, for example, skips an ayah or forgets an ayah, what should he do, right? It is the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ to correct him. To remind him about the ayah that he has forgotten. Was this ayah completely taken out of the Prophet's memory? No. Because we have said before that memory are two types. There is the conscious and there is the subconscious. There's the conscious and there is the subconscious. The conscious are things that you remember. And they are secret to you, secret to others, but they are not secret to you. Right? Because you know them, others do not know them. Right? But there is something called subconscious. Things that you used to remember, but you forget momentarily. So they go from your conscious into your subconscious. And it takes a certain event to trigger them to come back to conscious, right? Sometimes, something that you have forgotten, and then someone says something, and immediately, right? Or an incident happened in front of you, and what used to be hidden in your subconscious emerges and comes back, and you remember it. This is what we call what is أخفى إنه يعلم السر وأخفى وإن تجهر بالقول فإنه يعلم السر وأخفى. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not only know your secret, the secret that you know and others do not know, He knows the secret that you have also forgotten yourself, because it went into your subconscious, right? So momentarily you have forgotten. But it is that information is still there, but it is hidden. Hidden where? In your subconscious. Who knows? You might not know it momentarily, but it's hidden there. And an event might occur that will trigger it. and bring it back to your memory, right? But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows that. Even if it was hidden even to you as a person, things that were hidden in your subconscious, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows that. So the other tafsir is that, إِلَّا مَا شَاءَ اللَّهِ, either the subject of nasikh, and we said that this is weak, or the subject of that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sometimes makes the Prophet ﷺ forget certain ayat during his recitation in the salah in order to teach people how to, correct the imam when he forgets something during his salah. But the Prophet will never, these ayat will be still in the memory of the Prophet ﷺ. So that is, one of the it's the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make the Prophet ﷺ during these occasions, specific occasions, forget an ayah or skip an ayah in order for the Sahaba radiallahu anhum to learn what to do if the Imam, while leading them in the prayer, skips an ayah or forgets an ayah.
That's happening here. Imam, especially in Ramadan, Imam is reading, is in continuous, and all of a sudden
Yes.
instead of right away,
Yes. You should not confuse the Imam.
right.
Because my recommendation is, do not correct the Imam except if he stops completely and he does not know what to say. If he skips a word or skips an ayah, do not correct him. You can correct him after the prayer. You can tell him after the prayer that, by the way, in your recitation, you skipped ayah such and such. But if he completely stops and he's confused, he does not know where to go next, right? And he does not go for ruku'. Some of the imam, if they get stumped and they go for ruku', right? If he keeps on standing, it means he's asking for someone to help, right? But don't rush, because when you rush the imam, some people, they want to show off, subhanallah, that they are huffaz, right? So, they are waiting for the imam to trip, and then they will give him the issues. And sometimes, by the way, they make mistakes, Sometimes the imam is correct, and people behind him are incorrect, and this will lead to a bigger confusion. That's why I always say, if the imam continues his recitations, do not correct him. Keep it going, right? Whatever mistakes he made. After the prayer, you can correct him, right? You can correct him and you can say, by the way, between you and him, don't correct him like in public either, Because the issue is that you want to keep the flow of the prayer, right? And, these mistakes, everyone is subject to mistakes, right? Everyone makes mistakes, right? Yes. No, the sajda is not necessary. The sajda, by the way, sujood al-sahw, is not obligatory. It's a sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. It's not. It's not necessary. If he wants to make sujood al-sahw, that's fine, but it's not necessary. It's not like a requirement. It's not a requirement for the prayer to be complete. Right?
Yeah. Brother, what I learned, you're following the Imam.
Yes.
Imam did something, I cannot go.
And you should follow the imam. You should not.
Follow the Imam.
Yes. You should always follow the imam. إنما جعل الإمام يتبع. The imam is the leader. You should not do your own, follow the imam until he makes taslim. That's it. You follow him, as he does, right? That's very important. The other thing that I want to mention about the subject of naskh, in Surat Al-Baqarah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, ما ننسخ من آية أو ننسها نأتي بخير منها أو مثلها ألم تعلم أن الله على كل شيء قدير. This is ayah number 102, if I remember correctly, from Surah Al-Baqarah. Some of the scholars of Islam took this ayah to mean that there are certain ayat in the Quran that they were taken away from the memory of the Prophet ﷺ. Because he says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in this ayah, ما ننسخ من آية أو ننسها. Whenever we abrogate an ayah and make people to forget the ayah, we will bring another ayah that is better than that ayah, or like that ayah. In Surah Al-Baqarah, ما ننسخ من آية أو ننسها نأتي بخير منها أو مثلها. Whenever we abrogate an ayah, or whenever we make people forget an ayah, we will bring another ayah that is better for the people, meaning in their practice. Okay? Some people say that this applies to the Quran. Some people say, some of the Mufassirin say that this applies in the Quran, and they took it as an evidence that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala indeed sometimes he abrogates an ayah by taking it away, making people forget that ayah. Right? This ayah, by the way, does not apply to the Quran. Because when you read the Quran, you have to read the context. The ayat before this ayah is talking about Ahl al-Kitab. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, ما يود الذين كفروا just the ayah before that, ما يود الذين كفروا من أهل الكتاب ولا المشركين أن ينزل عليكم من خير من ربكم والله يختص برحمته من يشاء والله ذو الفضل العظيم ما ننسخ من آية أو ننسها. It means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us why Ahl al-Kitab did not believe in Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because they wanted the revelation, the new revelation to be to them. They wanted the new prophet to be to them, right? They did not want the prophethood to move from Bani Israel to, right? They were waiting for the new messenger to be, the new wahi to be a continuation of the wahi that was revealed to them. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling them that the wahi that we have revealed to you, we have abrogated. ما ننسخ من آية, يعني the wahi, the Torah that was revealed especially to Bani Israel, and the Injil that was revealed especially or specifically to Bani Israel, not specifically, يعني the Torah came to Bani Israel specifically. The Injil came to Bani Israel specifically. This wahi that we revealed to you, we have abrogated by something that is better, something that is global, something that is universal, which is what? The Quran. ما ننسخ من آية أو ننسها. The ayat that we revealed to you, O Bani Israel, to the previous prophets and messengers, the revelation that was specific to specific nations, these ayat we have abrogated and we have replaced by the global message and the universal message, which is the message of the Quran. So this ayah does not refer to abrogation within the Quran. This ayah is referring to the fact that the Quran abrogated all the revelation to the previous prophets and messengers that came before Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That the message of Islam abrogated these messages before Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is very important to understand. You know that this ayah in Surah Al-Baqarah does not refer to abrogation in the Quran itself. It refers to that the Quran as a whole, the message of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as a whole, abrogated, right? The messages before Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. How do we understand that? From the context. When we read the Quran, we should not take an ayah out of context. We should read the ayat before it and the ayat after it to see the subject about which the surah is, the ayat are talking, right? So this is very important. Yes.
You're saying ayah before and ayah after, and illa mashallah, when this comes in, you say this does not apply to the before ayah.
No. What I'm saying is that in order to understand the theme, there's a theme. There's usually a theme, right, in the Quran. To understand the theme and put things in context. I'm not saying that meanings are not complete. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ends an ayah, it means the meaning is complete in this ayah. But what I am referring to is that in order to understand, what the ayah applies to, you have to understand the theme. For example, in Surah Al-Ahzab, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya nisa an-nabi. He's addressing the wives of the Prophet ﷺ. لَسْتُنَّ كَأَحَدٍ مِّنَ النِّسَاءِ. You are not like other women. إِنِ اتَّقَيْتُنْ, if you fear Allah, if you are conscientious of Allah. فَلَا تَخْضَعْنَ بِالْقَوْلِ فَيَطْمَعَ الَّذِي فِي قَلْبِهِ مَرَضٌ. When you speak to people, speak with modesty and respect. Otherwise, some people with illness in their hearts, they might think something else, right? وَقُلْنَا قَوْلًا مَعْرُوفًا. When you speak good, useful words, right? وَقَرْنَ فِي بُيُوتِكُنْ. And remain in your houses. وَلَا تَبَرَّجْنَ تَبَرُّجَ الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ الْأُولَى. All the ayat. At the end, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says at the end, إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيُذْهِبَ عَنْكُمُ الرِّجْسَ أَهْلَ الْبَيْتِ وَيُطَهِّرَكُمْ تَطْهِيرًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to remove all sorts of impurity from you, أهل البيت. Who are أهل البيت? If you take this part of the ayah and do not refer to the context that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is addressing to whom from the beginning? He's addressing whom? The wives of the Prophet ﷺ. If you take this part out, and إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ أَن يُذْهِبَ عَنْكُمُ, you do not understand whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about, because you have to understand the theme. You have to put things back into the context. So we know that Ahl al-Bayt first and foremost are the wives of the Prophet ﷺ. These are Ahl al-Bayt. Later on, the Prophet ﷺ also associated with Ahl al-Bayt and added to Ahl al-Bayt Ali radiyallahu anhu, Fatima, and Al-Hasan and Al-Husayn. So Ahl al-Bayt collectively are the wives of the Prophet ﷺ because of the Quranic text from Surat Al-Ahzab. The wives of the Prophet ﷺ, Aisha radiyallahu anha, Khadija alayhi salam, all the wives of the Prophet ﷺ are from Ahl al-Bayt. And then the Prophet ﷺ added to them Ali ibn Abi Talib radiyallahu anhu, Fatima alayhi salam, and Al-Hasan and Al-Husayn. Because he said, you know the hadith Imam al-Bukhari, Imam Muslim, hadith al-Kisa, the famous hadith that the Prophet ﷺ took them in and he wrapped them with his cloak, and he said, Allahumma inna ha'ula'i ahli bayti. Those are from my household. Right? So this is the meaning that. So some people take إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت. He said أهل البيت are Ali, Fatima, Al-Hasan, Hussein, and that's it. The person who says that, he ignored the ayat. He did not, because the ayat are clear. The ayat talk about the wives of the Prophet ﷺ. Yes.
Yeah, what about Zunnurayn and Usman? Usman was also the son-in-law of the Prophet.
But he's not from Ahl al-Bayt.
No, but that's what
Yes.
I'm saying. That is there any
No.
No, it's not, right?
Neither Abu Bakr is not from Ahl al-Bayt.
Ali is also son-in-law.
Yes.
Fatima is a daughter, so the Zunnurayn,
But these were added by the text, by the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. The hadith of the Prophet ﷺ specifically added Ali and Fatima and Al-Hasan and Al-Husayn. So Ahl al-Bayt now, by definition, Ahl al-Bayt by definition are the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, Ummahat al-Mu'mineen, plus these four only. Ahl al-Bayt. Okay. إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا. طيب. سنقرئك فلا تنسى إلا ما شاء الله إنه يعلم الجهر وما يخفى. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows everything. Things that are said openly, this is called jahr, right? Jahr, يعني said things that are said in public, right? He knows them. And he knows, of course, not only those things, but he knows, he knows what is hidden too. Secrets and what is beyond secrets, as we have interpreted before. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows things that are said openly everywhere at any moment in time, right? Anywhere in this universe, at any moment in time, things that are said openly, Allah knows them. And things that are hidden, secrets, and things that are beyond secrets. Beyond secrets. Secrets that are secrets to you, which is what is in your subconscious, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows. وَمَا يَخْفَى. Things that are beyond our comprehension as human beings, right? Beyond our knowledge, beyond the boundaries of our knowledge, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows, right? إِنَّهُ يَعْلَمُ الْجَهْرَ وَمَا يَخْفَى إِلَّا مَا شَاءَ اللَّهِ إِنَّهُ يَعْلَمُ الْجَهْرَ وَمَا يَخْفَى. نعم. وَنُيَسِّرُكَ لِلْيُسْرَى. This is a very beautiful ayah. We always say that The Sharia of Muhammad ﷺ is easy. But look at the text of the ayah. وَنُيَسِّرُكَ, we will make you easy. وَنُيَسِّرُكَ لِلْيُسْرَى. So what is وَنُيَسِّرُكَ لِلْيُسْرَى? يعني, in addition to the Sharia itself being easy, we will make it most natural to you. We'll make it, وَنُيَسِّرُكَ لِلْيُسْرَى, it means that we will make you well inclined, both mentally well inclined and well prepared, both mentally and spiritually and physically, to take on that mission. We'll make the mission itself is easy, but we will make it come naturally to you. Like a second nature to you. Exactly. That's a very good description, right? Imagine that you are undertaking a mission and it's part of your nature to do such a thing. You have been prepared mentally, spiritually, right? To take that mission. You do it like when you say your car, when you drive your car home, because you drive the same route every time that the car drives itself, right? You say that, you do not need to pay attention, right? Because you are aware of everything, things come naturally. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised the Prophet ﷺ, he has a great promise from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that not only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make the Sharia easy, but He will make you conducive and mentally and spiritually prepared. He will make it as a second nature to you, which is a good description, to undertake the mission. وَنُيَسِّرُكَ لِلْيُسْرَى. So many examples from the life of the Prophet ﷺ. Like, for example, when we come to prayer in the masjid or stand for prayer in home, we take it as what? As an obligation, something that we have to do, right? But when we eat, for example, when we're invited like to a good meal, we do that with pleasure, something we look forward to, right? The Prophet, it was the reverse. When the prayer time used to come, he used to say to Bilal, "Arihna biha ya Bilal." Comfort us with the prayer, O Bilal. Comfort us. You know what things that you do in order to relax and to comfort yourself and to indulge yourself? These things to the Prophet ﷺ was the salah and the ibadat. The attitude as human beings is that, we do the ibadah because we have to, right? When we get to the stage when the ibadah, we do it because it comforts us, right? We are looking forward to doing it. It's not like an obligation, I have to go prepare myself, make my wudu, it's too cold, we're going to the masjid or whatever, But it is something that I have to do, right? It's obligatory. To the Prophet ﷺ, who was mentally prepared and spiritually prepared to undertake this mission, it was something that he does naturally and he looks forward to. Not only that, he looks forward to. To take himself out from the dunya, he goes into the prayer and to seek comfort. أرحنا بها يا بلال وجعلت قرة عيني في الصلاة. The apple of my eye was made in prayer, or prayer was made the apple of my eye. The most beloved thing to him, alayhi salatu wassalam. This is how he was prepared to undertake this mission, right? Another example, that famous hadith when the Prophet ﷺ was with Abdullah ibn Umar radiyallahu anhu, and they were walking in Medina or on the outskirts of Medina, and they heard a shepherd playing the flute. They heard the shepherd playing the flute, right? So the Prophet ﷺ put his fingers in his ears. This is a stage that is beyond many people. Even, things that are not only things that are haram, things that are, when your soul is occupied by the Quran, anything else besides the Quran will look alien. You cannot even take it. You see, when your soul is occupied, is full with the Quran, anything that is outside the Quran is alien to you. So when he heard the flute, he was disturbed, alayhi salatu wassalam. So he put his fingers in his ears. And they kept walking, and once in a while he says to Abdullah ibn Umar, do you still hear it, O Abdullah? He says, yes. He kept, until they were far away. Do you still hear it? He said, I don't hear it. So he took his hands, his fingers. Notice, now, this hadith, by the way, cannot be used as an evidence that listening to a flute is haram. Because if it was haram, he would have prohibited also Abdullah from hearing it. But this is an indication of the level, how elevated the soul of the Prophet ﷺ was. His heart was attached to this da'wah. His heart was attached to the Quran. Anything else, right, that we as human beings might find pleasant, like listening to certain music, we find it pleasant, right? To the Prophet ﷺ, it was a disturbance, right? Because his heart is attached to the Quran. When we yassiruka lil yusra, we will make this way natural to you, come naturally to you. We'll make it very easy. And this, by the way, is a general ruling for the believers can aspire to reach that stage. وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ لَا نُكَلِّفُ نَفْسًا إِلَّا وُسْعَهَا. Right? وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ لَا نُكَلِّفُ نَفْسًا إِلَّا وُسْعَهَا أُولَٰئِكَ أَصْحَابُ الْجَنَّةِ هُمْ فِيهَا خَالِدُونَ. Notice, those people, al-mu'mineen, those who believed and they performed the righteous deeds, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us that these righteous deeds that they performed, they held themselves to a matter, right, that is within their reach. We did not make it difficult for them. It is not difficult. We do not make it obligatory on people to do things that are outside their capacity, right? So when these people performed, they performed things which are within their reach, right? It is not something that is impossible, right, that we ordered them to do. And because they have done things that are that within their reach, right, they deserve what they have in terms of reward. لا نكلف نفسا إلا وسعها أولئك أصحاب الجنة هم فيها خالدون. Yes. This is in Surat Al-A'raf. Just before the ayat of talk about the A'raf. Yes.
This surah came later or before. Alam nashrah laka sadrak. In that way Allah also said.
It's very completely linked. ألم نشرح لك صدرك ووضعنا عنك وزرك الذي أنقض ظهرك. Let me comment on this, although when we come to the surah we'll explain it fully. But a very quick comment on this surah. Surah Al-Sharh, when the Prophet ﷺ was given this mission, he did not take it lightly. Can you imagine? This is the most important mission any human being can imagine, right? The mission of carrying guidance and wahi, right, to the people. So the Prophet ﷺ did not take it lightly, right? And he was stressed out because of that, right? When you are given a mission or a task to do by your supervisor, right? And that task is difficult. It's not easy. He's trying to challenge you, right? To bring the best out of you. You get stressed out, right? Can now take that small task that was given to you by yours and amplify it like 1 billion times. And think about the mission that was given to the Prophet ﷺ, right? So the Prophet ﷺ, because he wanted to do 100% job, right? He was stressed out, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to comfort him, he revealed that surah. أَلَمْ نَشْرَحْ لَكَ صَدْرَكَ وَوَضَعْنَا عَنْكَ. What you used to think it's going to be a load on your back, we are going to relieve you of that, because you are going to make it easy. When we يَسِّرُكَ لِلْيُسْرَى. So there's every connection between this ayah here in this surah and Surah Al-Sharh. And we will come, inshallah, very beautiful connection. We will come to elaborate that, inshallah, in Surah Al-Sharh. Now, when يَسِّرُكَ لِلْيُسْرَى, now we understand what is نُيَسِّرُكَ and what is al-yusra. The Sharia itself is easy, and we will make you natural. We'll prepare you and make you naturally inclined to carry that mission. Okay, when يَسِّرُكَ لِلْيُسْرَى. نعم. فذكر إن نفعت الذكرى. فذكر إن نفعت الذكرى. فذكر إن نفعت الذكرى. What is تذكير? What is تذكير? تذكير is to convey the dhikr. And what is the dhikr? The Quran. So التذكير, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says فذكر, يعني convey the dhikr. And what is the dhikr? The Quran. Convey the dhikr to the people. This is تذكير. فذكر إن نفعت الذكرى. طيب. If you take the meaning of this ayah literally, it says, and I'm going to say the meaning literally, remind with the Quran if the reminder is useful. Remind with the Quran if the reminder is useful. Does the Prophet ﷺ, was that actually the command to the Prophet ﷺ is just to pick and choose, to say, well, this person, I think reminding him is going to be beneficial, is going to be, fruitful. So I'm going to focus on him. This, Abu Jahl, I'm going to avoid him. I'm not going to call him or invite him or remind him because he's a hopeless case. Is this the meaning of the ayah? No. Because the Prophet ﷺ did not know, only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows whose reminder is going to be fruitful. Or the ayah means that not everyone benefits from the reminder. So you have to remind, to carry the message, and to carry it publicly, and in general. Do not target certain people and ignore other people because you think that these people might benefit from the reminder and these people might not benefit. You convey the message generally to everyone. So the Prophet ﷺ invited Abu Bakr as-Siddiq in the same way that he invited Al-Walid ibn al-Mughira, in the same way that he invited Utbah ibn Rabi'a, Abu Jahl. He invited all of them and he reminded all of them about the Quran. He carried the message to all of them without any distinction, right? But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling him here that although you are carrying the message to everyone, not everyone is going to benefit from this dhikr, from this reminder. Only certain people will benefit. So your reminder would be fruitful with certain people and will not be fruitful with other people. Like he said in Surah Qaf, فَذَكِّرْ بِالْقُرْآنِ مَنْ يَخَافُ وَعِيدٍ. فَذَكِّرْ بِالْقُرْآنِ مَنْ يَخَافُ وَعِيدٍ. Remind with the Quran, but the only people who are going to respond to your reminder is those who are conscientious. They have conscience in their heart. They are conscientious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in their heart. Not everyone benefits, right? If you have a soil that you want to implant, right? There is a soil that you can implant and irrigate, right? And it will be fruitful. Other soil, right? No matter what you do, right? It's not going to produce because, this soil is not fertile. But you, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you are commanded to convey the da'wah to everyone. But does the da'wah actually benefit everyone? Does everyone benefit from the da'wah? No. There are certain people who are going to be responsive and they are going to benefit and the da'wah will be fruitful with them. And there are other people who are not going to. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِن نَفَعَتِ الذِّكْرَى. Because in, which is used for conditioning in the Arabic language, indicates that it could happen and it might not happen. So for example, if you say to your friend, إِن أَتَيْتَنِي إِن زُرْتَنِي أَكْرَمْتُكَ. If you visit me, I will cook you a good meal. If you visit me, if you use in, it means that you are hesitating, meaning you are not sure if he is going to come or not. But not any if. In, there's a difference between in and إذا. In the Arabic language, there's a difference between using in for conditioning and using إذا. So for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِذَا جَاءَ نَصْرُ اللَّهِ, it means نَصْرُ اللَّهِ وَالْفَتْحِ is going to come for sure. There's no question. Because of that, he used إِذَا. إِذَا جَاء, يعني it's a matter of time. It's coming, it's coming. إِذَا جَاء, إِذَا جَاء. If he says إِن جَاءَ نَصْرُ اللَّهِ وَالْفَتْحِ, it means it might come, it might not come.
But that doesn't mean indeed.
No. Inna, indeed. Inna with the shadda. In here, it means conditioning. In with the sukoon, there's a difference between the usage of inna Muhammadan mujtahidun, for example. Indeed, Muhammad is a hard-working person. This is inna with the shadda. In is used for conditioning. And it is used for conditioning when the condition might happen and might not happen. You are not sure. Yes. إن جاءكم فاسق بنبأ. إن جاءكم فاسق بنبأ. It's not always that a fasiq will come to you with a naba. He could be a fasiq and he could be, you have to make sure. So in, it is used when the condition might occur and might not occur. Either it is used when it occurs for sure. Right? So here, فذكر إن نفعت الذكرى. يعني the dhikra might be beneficial to certain people and might not be beneficial to other people. Your mission, Muhammad, or Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is to convey the reminder. Whomever is going to benefit from it or not benefit from it, that is not your business. Right? Your business is to convey. Right? فذكر إن نفعت الذكرى. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the next ayah who is going to benefit from the reminder and who is not going to benefit from the reminder. So he says in the next ayah, سيذكر من يخشى. Anyone who has khashya, anyone who has conscience in his heart is going to remember, is going to benefit from the reminder, right? من يخشى is the person. What is khashya? What is the difference between for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل لرأيته خاشعا متصدعا من خشية الله. There is khashya and there is khawf. إنما يخشى الله من عباده العلماء. إنما يخشى الله من عباده العلماء. There is khashya in the Arabic language and there is khawf. When I say أنا أخاف من فلان أو أنا أخشى فلانا, there's a difference. الخوف, الخشية is based on knowledge that this person whom you are fearing is capable of doing to you what you fear him to do. And it is mixed with reverence and respect. This is khashya. So khashya, it has to be, in order for us to call it khashya, it has to be based on knowledge. Sometimes people are afraid of things that are not real, right? So for example, people are afraid from ghosts, right? Which are not real. We do not call that khashya. We call that khawf, because the subject, the matter that they are afraid of is not real, right? But if someone is afraid of the accountability in the day of judgment, that is real, right? That is real. And his fear from that accountability is based on his knowledge, on something that he knows that it's going to happen. And that fear is mixed up with reverence and respect to the one who is going to hold him accountable. So these two factors, if that fear, is based on knowledge and it's mixed with, reverence and respect, we call it khashiyah. No, khawf could be khawf. You could be no khawf, but notice khawf could be of something that is real and something that is not real. Khashya is always from something that is real, because it's based on knowledge that it's going to happen. So when you make khashya, you have khashya from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is a real khashya, right? That is Allah, because you realize and you know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is definitely capable of doing to you what He wants to do. So this khashya, this khawf has a basis, has a real basis. But khawf, sometimes it has a real basis and sometimes it does not have a real basis, right? There are people who are scared to leave their houses. لا خوف عليهم, يعني they should not fear something that is real and something that they imagine. There is no khawf whatsoever on them. Because khawf, remember, the difference between khawf and khashya is that sometimes you fear something that is not real, and sometimes you fear something that is real. Something that you imagine, right, that it could harm you, right? If you use the word khawf, you have this meaning in mind. This is the meaning that khawf applies to. Khashya is different. Khashya, you fear something that you know for sure is going to happen. And the person that you are having khashya with, this khawf is mixed with because you revere him. You have a great respect toward him. This is khashya. So it's a mixture of these things. This is what differentiates khashya and khawf. ألا إن أولياء الله لا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. يعني they should not fear of anything, whether it's real or imaginary. What is imaginary? يعني they imagine that they can harm them, something that they imagine that it could harm them, and something that they can truly harm them. There is no khawf. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala negates all sorts of fear from their heart. They should not have in their heart any sort of fear, whether it's real or imagined. Because so many sources of fear in the human society are so many, and many of them are not real. People make up stories sometimes about, graveyard, for example. The fear from graveyard. Going to the graveyard during nighttime. People fear that, right? Is that fear real? It's not real. No one can harm you. As a matter of fact, dead people are more peaceful than living ones. Fearing from the graveyard, this is something that is imaginary. But yet people fear from it. Do we call that khashya? We do not call it khashya because that sort of fear is not real. Khashya has to be always real, based on your ilm. Ilm يعني you are sure that whatever you have khashya toward, he is capable of doing what he is threatening to do to you if you disobey. And in addition to knowledge, it has to also be mixed with reverence and respect. Right? So a tyrant, you might have khashya from a tyrant because you know that he can kill you. But we do not call that a khashya because it's not mixed. You fear him, but you do not have any respect or any reverence toward him. So khashya has to have these two elements together. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, سَيَذَّكَّرُ مَن يَخْشَى. Notice, the person who has khashya in his heart, in the meaning that we just interpreted, he will remember. He will benefit from that remembrance. The person who has khashya in his heart, he will remember, he will benefit from that remembrance. سيذكر من يخشى ويتجنبها الأتقى الأشقى عفوا ويتجنبها الأشقى. And he will be far away from remembrance, the one who is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here called him Al-Ashqa. Al-Ashqa, it means the one who was doomed, the one who is miserable, the one who is hapless, rich, the one who does not have any hope in his remembrance. This is called Al-Ashqa. And like, for example, Abu Jahl is Al-Ashqa. Abu Lahab is Al-Ashqa. Why? Because they, through their behavior, through their attitude toward the da'wah of the Prophet ﷺ, they sealed their hearts, they sealed their minds, they did not want to listen, right? And they insisted on, because of their arrogance, because of their defiance, they insisted on rejecting the message. At that point in time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala seals their hearts. Their hearts cannot receive the khayr anymore. And the word ashqa, they become miserable, hapless, wretches, right? The word ashqa applies to them. So al-ashqa is the one who is deprived from the mercy of the message getting to him. Why? Why was he deprived? Because of his attitude. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala originally does not deprive anyone from the nur of hidayah, of guidance. But there are certain people who, because of their practice, because of their attitude, they get deprived. Right? Like Abu Jahl, he was deprived, khalas, hopeless. Abu Lahab, he was condemned and deprived completely. Tabbat yada Abi Lahabin wa tab. This surah was revealed in his life, during the life of Abu Lahab. This is a miracle of the Prophet ﷺ. This surah is a miracle. Why? Because suppose that after the revelation of this surah, Abu Lahab became a Muslim. What would happen to that surah? So this surah is telling us that Abu Lahab is al-ashqa. Yani he will never benefit from the reminder. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sealed his heart and mind. He will continue on his attitude that he chose, the attitude of enmity toward the message until his death. And he will die on this state. His wife too. Abu Lahab and his wife. So this is a miracle. This is a miracle to the Prophet ﷺ because simply Abu Lahab might, later on says, I'm convinced. If this happened, this will completely negate the surah, right? But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling the Prophet ﷺ that this will never happen because this guy's mind and heart has been sealed, closed. It's not capable of receiving the huda anymore. He's al-ashqa. Al-ashqa is the most miserable person. The most miserable person is not the person who is deprived from wealth or deprived from status. The most miserable person is the one who is deprived from hidayah.
Check.
Yes.
Everything in the hands of Allah. Allah could change Abu Talib's heart. Allah could change the heart.
It has to be your choice, first of all.
Yeah.
First and foremost, it's a choice in your hand as a human being, right? If you choose the way of hidayah, Allah will guide you further. If you choose the way of defiance and arrogance and you insist upon it, Allah will seal your heart. Simple as that, right? So, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, Umar ibn Khattab, Ali ibn Abi Talib, Uthman ibn Affan radiyallahu anil jami', they chose the way of hidayah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guided them further on the way of hidayah. Abu Jahl and Abu Lahab and Walid ibn al-Mughira, right? They chose the way of dalal and they insisted upon it, right? They sealed, but they did not want to listen, they did not want to think, they did not want to be objective about the da'wah, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at one point in time sealed their hearts. They cannot be recipients of huda anymore.
Why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, your job is to convey. Hidayah is in my hand. It's not, he didn't say hidayah.
Yes. We talked about the subject of hidayah several times, if you remember, and we differentiated between two types of hidayah. Hidayatul dalala and hidayatul i'ana. The hidayah of dalala, this is the hidayah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives to everyone. Everyone is amenable because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him the intellect, right? Everyone is amenable because of his intellect if he avoid all, if he avoids all his defiance and arrogance and he objectively think about the subject, he has the capability of reaching the truth. Every human being. So the hidayah of showing you the right path and telling you that this is the right path, this is the wrong path, this is given to every human being without any differentiation, right? This is called hidayatul dalala. And it was made as part of our nature as human beings, right? To realize that there's the way, this is the way of the truth and there was the way of falsehood. But he gave us the will to choose. The free will to choose between this way or that way. Based on our choice, the second hidayah manifests itself, right? If we choose the right way, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will provide us with another hidayah, which is the hidayah of tawfiq. Who created that amenability in us as human beings, the being amenable to follow the right path versus the wrong path, or vice versa, and having the will to choose this versus that? Who created that in us? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the propensity of hidayah in us. What Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told the Prophet ﷺ, indeed, the Prophet ﷺ, when he invites people, his mission is not to convert these people. His mission is to convey the message. Because the Prophet ﷺ, he was very adamant about these people becoming Muslims. He wanted to save them. Right? Including Abu Jahl, including his uncle Abu Lahab, right? Including Al-Walid ibn al-Mughira. That's why this has everything to do with Alam Nashrah Laka Sadrak too, because the Prophet ﷺ, he took it the matter to be like a matter of so vital that he thought in the beginning that his mission is not just to convey the da'wah, his mission is to ensure that everyone to whom he convey the da'wah become a Muslim. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala assured him, comforted him, right, by telling him, no, this is not your responsibility, because people might choose differently. As a matter of fact, even now, if someone, so there are Muslims and there are non-Muslims today, right? There are Muslims and there are non-Muslims today. Do we know, even among Muslims, who's going to Jannah or Nar? No. Do we know even among non-Muslims, do we know that every non-Muslim will go to the Nar? No, we don't know. We don't know. Because, very simply, in order for someone, right, to go to the Jannah and the Nar, he has to choose, right? And in order for him to choose, the message has to be clearly, right, conveyed to him. If the Muslims do not carry their responsibility of conveying the message to the world, right, in the way that the Prophet ﷺ explained it, right, and if we are lazy, and there are people who did not hear about the Prophet ﷺ, and there are people who did not, learn about Islam the way that it should be, and they, in the day of judgment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala might accept their excuse. They say, oh Allah, no one conveyed, we did not know. وَمَا كُنَّا مُعَذِّبِينَ حَتَّى نَبْعَثَ رَسُولًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, we will not hold people accountable until we send a messenger to convey the message clearly to them. That's why it is part of our deen not to judge people. And don't think that only Muslims are going to the Jannah. You might be surprised. You might be surprised. And don't think that only the kuffar, what we call the kuffar, will go to the hellfire. You might be surprised again. This is something that is in the hand of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَمَا عَلَى الرَّسُولِ إِلَّا الْبَلَاغُ الْمُبِينُ. Your mission, O Muhammad, is to convey the message. And this is the mission that we inherited from the Prophet ﷺ. If we fall short, right, there are people who might, there are people who learned about the message, it was conveyed to them, and they were defiant to reject it. And there are people who did not even know about the message. It was not conveyed to them in an appealing fashion, in a fashion that is illuminating, right? So these we do not know about. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala might, in the day of judgment, accept their hujjah, and their, yeah.
If Allah were to interfere, right, and change people's heart,
Yeah.
then it's a kind of unfair to other people too,
Yes.
Our heads are, like other people, then it's like not really fair,
Yes.
Allah has to change people's heart.
Yes. So the first kind of hidayah is given to people without any distinction. The second type of hidayah is given to people according to their own performance. Right? So I give you the hidayah. If someone accepts and he starts to perform, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will guide him further. If someone rejects it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at one point in time will seal his heart. Abu Talib, according to the vast majority of the scholars of Islam, they said he did not accept the hidayah. So there's a minority, by the way. That opinion is there, that Abu Talib actually became a Muslim, accepted the hidayah of the Prophet ﷺ. And the way that they interpreted the attitude of Abu Talib is, remember the story of Mu'min al-Fir'aun. There's a surah in the Quran called Surat Ghafir. Surat Ghafir or Surat al-Mu'min. Also the second name of the surah is Surat al-Mu'min, in which there was a man from the household of Fir'aun. He believed in Musa alayhi salam, but in order for him to protect and to defend Musa most effectively, he chose to conceal and hide his iman. Right? In order for him to protect and to defend Musa most effectively, he chose to do what? To conceal his iman. And he was very effective. وقال رجل مؤمن من آل فرعون يكتم إيمانه أتقتلون رجلا أن يقول ربي الله. When Fir'aun was about to kill Musa alayhi salam, what did he say, that mu'min of Al-Fir'aun? How can you kill a person, he's innocent. What did he do? He says, La ilaha illallah. He says only Rabbi Allah. That is, his freedom to choose the aqidah that he wants to choose. You see, so يكتم إيمانه, يعني he used to conceal his faith. At that point in time, Fir'aun and his entourage, they did not know that this person he believed in Musa alayhi salam. So the minority of the scholars of Islam, very small minority, said that Abu Talib actually believed in the Prophet ﷺ, in the message of Islam. And if you read his poem in which he praised the Prophet ﷺ, that is one of the most beautiful poems written by the Arab poets. Some people say that it is even more eloquent than the 7 poems that were written in golden water and hung on the Kaaba before Islam. وَلَقَدْ عَلِمْتُ بِأَنَّ دِينَ مُحَمَّدٍ مِنْ خَيْرِ أَدْيَانِ الْبَرِيَّةِ دِينًا. وَلَقَدْ عَلِمْت, I have known that the deen of Muhammad is the best deen that this humanity has known. That's Abu Talib saying that. Abu Talib saying that. So there's a minority among the scholars of Islam who said, and this opinion, by the way, is not like a strange opinion, that Abu Talib, in order for him to stay more effective in terms of, because if he declared his iman openly, the kuffar of Quraysh, the leaders of Quraysh, would take a position against him immediately. And his intercession, he used to intercede, Abu Talib, he used to make things lighter and easier for the Prophet ﷺ and for the mu'mineen. In order for him to be able to continue doing that effectively, they say that he chose to conceal his iman. And that is not a very weak opinion in my stand. Now, yes, let's have questions in the few. Who's that? Yes, Asiya bint Muzahim. Asiya bint Muzahim, the wife of Fir'aun, she was not open. She concealed her, and she is Sayyidat Nisa Ahl al-Jannah. From the Sayyidat of women in Ahl al-Jannah is Asiya bint Muzahim, and Khadija bint Khuwaylid, and Fatima bint Muhammad, and Maryam ibn Imran. These are the 4 that the Prophet ﷺ said that these are the highest, they have the highest degrees in Nisa Ahl al-Jannah. And she did conceal her faith. Now. Yes, the tabdeel, we talked about this before too. وإذا بدلنا آية مكان آية والله أعلم بما ينزل قالوا إنما أنت مفتر. What happens? This tabdeel does not mean taking out an ayah and replacing it by another ayah. This means the following. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala started revealing Surat al-Baqarah, for example, how many ayat is Surat al-Baqarah? 286. Suppose that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed 50 ayahs in one installment. Suppose that ayat al-Dayn was among the first 50 ayahs to be revealed. So suppose that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed 50 ayahs, among which is ayat al-Dayn, which is ayah 280. Right? Or so. Now when the first installment was revealed, ayat al-Dayn was among the first 50 ayahs, right? So its number would be, for example, 49 or 45. Right? When the revelation of the whole surah was completed, now the number of ayat al-Dayn, after it used to be 45, it became 280. So the kuffar would say, well, this ayah was number 45, you changed its position to 280, and ayah number 45 became another ayah that was revealed later on. You see this is the tabdeel that is intended in this surah. وَإِذَا بَدَّلْنَا آيَةً مَكَانَ آيَةٍ, because the Quran was revealed not at once, and the large surahs, they were not revealed in one installment, right? Many of the big surahs were not revealed in one installment. So sometimes like a certain installment will come, and that installment will contain an ayah that at the end, at the final arrangement of the surah, this ayah will go somewhere else in the surah, and it will be replaced by another ayah. Just the location. وَإِذَا بَدَّلْنَا آيَةً مَكَانَ آيَةٍ Wallahu a'lam. So this is just referring to the location, and we have actually talked about that, I think, some time before. Oh, there's an before.
So I was praying with a brother, and we finish prayer, we say shake hands and Allah, may Allah accept. Another brother jumped and said this is bid'ah.
It's not bid'ah. It's not bid'ah. This is actually a good thing to do. Because this is a dua. This is a dua. When you say taqabbalullah. So the he's asking after the salah if you shake the hand of your brother and say taqabbalullah. Taqabbalullah yani may Allah accept your prayer. Is this a bid'ah? This is not a bid'ah. And this is a good thing to do, and inshallah Allah will reward you for it, because this is a dua. All what you are doing is you are asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you are making a dua for your brother, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept his prayer. This is a good thing to do, and Allah will reward you for that. The notion that anything that was not done by the Prophet is a bid'ah, that's a wrong notion. The notion that anything that was not done by the Sahaba is a bid'ah, that's the wrong notion. And at one point in time, I think we talked about the subject of bid'ah in details. We will have the occasion to repeat that or to remind you more about that. Anything that falls under the general category of daleel, under the general daleel. So the general daleel is to make dua for your brother. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet ﷺ encourage the Muslims to make dua for each other, right? Dua with the khair. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase your iman. May Allah accept your hasanat. May Allah forgive your sayyat. These are dua, ad'iyah that you make for your brother. At any occasion, this dua is highly recommended, and it's a good deed to do. Now, last question. Time? Yes.
Okay, Islam is like in the air, is on the news, and is also on the news in the negative.
Yes.
But should the unbelievers, because you Jew, Christian, should they take the time to learn about Muslims don't directly tell them about it?
No, Islam is not being conveyed the way that it should be conveyed. What people see about Muslims most of the time is negative.
Right.
You see, on the social media, what do you see? You see Muslims answering each other, making takfir of each other, right? Condemning each other, right? You are Ash'ari, you are Sufi, you are whatever, you are Mubtadi', you are so and so. This is not giving the right message. Right? This is not how the Prophet ﷺ carried the da'wah, right? So when we say that Islam has to be conveyed, it has to be conveyed in the way the Prophet ﷺ. When you go to the social media, you do not see that bright, rosy picture about the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which it is worthy of course. This is the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is the deen of haqq. But is it being conveyed to the people the way that it should be? The answer is no. Yes. So anyway, but the da'wah, it's our responsibility as Muslims. We have ud'u ila sabili rabbika bil hikmati wal maw'izati al hasana. Even if someone goes to a library, suppose that someone makes an attempt to understand Islam, right? And he goes to the library and he started reading. Suppose that after all his reading, and he was objective, but subhanAllah, his aql did not take him all the way. And he was seeking the truth and he did not reach the truth. Does he have a valid excuse? He might. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala might accept his excuse in the day of judgment. So these are matters that we should leave to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because everything is in his hands in the day of judgment. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم جزاكم الله خير.